Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective. This is Think Design Stories. In this series, we will be going behind the scenes on one of the most iconic laptop brands ever conceived and is still going strong. Luis Hernandez retired from Lenovo in January of 2024, and he was the leader of Lenovo's Commercial Product Solutions development team. He had an overall responsibility for the development of PC and cloud-ready devices, which included ThinkPad and education PCs, workstation PCs such as ThinkStation and the ThinkPad P series, smart office solutions such as ThinkSmart, OEM devices, and strategic innovation like the X1 Fold, the first foldable PC in the industry. He oversaw over 900 engineers across the development labs in China, Japan, and the United States. Prior to this, he was the vice president of the product group, PC, and Smart Solutions Development, responsible for developing Lenovo consumer SMB and commercial PCs. Luis joined Lenovo during the merge of IBM PC and Lenovo Group in 2005. During 2005 to 2016, Luis held several technical and business executive positions. In 2005, he was one of the first Lenovo leaders to integrate engineering organizations in the global supply chain. In 2010, he established ThinkPad Edge business unit, focused on small businesses while on the international assignment in Beijing. He also took Lenovo laptop SMB market share from number 4 to number 1 in a span of 2 years. Later in 2013, he became leader of the ThinkPad development team, and in 2014, he became vice president and general manager of the ThinkPad business. He had overall responsibility for the iconic ThinkPad product line for 2 years, and most notably in 2015, he led the expansion of the X1 family and celebrated the shipment of the 100th million ThinkPad. In addition to the day-to-day responsibilities of business, Luis was instrumental in driving innovation and bringing change into the organization. His career started in 1987 with IBM PC Group in Boca Raton, Florida. He worked with IBM for 18 years with numerous management and engineering positions. From 1987 to 1997, he held several engineering positions in VLSI and PC system development during the initial boom of the PC industry. From 1997 to 2005, Luis held several management positions in PC system development, PC mechanical, DSP modem, software tools, and quality for IBM PC products. Luis graduated from the University of Notre Dame with a BS in electrical engineering and received an MBA from the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University. He was awarded 5 U.S. patents, has written several technical reports and disclosures related to PC technology, and was appointed Senior Technical Staff Member in 2004. Luis is married and lives in Cary, North Carolina since 1995 with his wife Kristen and 3 daughters. He is a retired lieutenant colonel from the United States Army Reserve and a veteran of the Iraq and Afghanistan campaigns. He is a board member of several charitable organizations, which include St. Michael's Honduras Sister Parish Mission, the Cramden Institute, the Cristo Rey Triangle High School, and the Emily K. Center in Durham, North Carolina. Please welcome Luis Hernandez. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Luis. This is an absolute pleasure and honor to have you here today to talk about, from what I understand, a pretty expansive career in technology, both with IBM and Lenovo, and logging quite a few hours with ThinkPad as well. Absolutely love that shirt that you got on there with the ThinkPad 25 logo. That's phenomenal. So the first question that I have for you is just a bit of information about yourself and how did you get involved as a career in computers and technology, and how did that kind of get you into working for one of the big players at the time, like IBM?
Yeah, good question, Thomas. And I'm from Puerto Rico. I'm actually right now here in Isla Verde, where I grew up in Carolina. I went to school not even a mile away from where I'm living right now. I live 6 months here and 6 months in the States, in North Carolina. And I started early on being curious about how things work. I always like to, tinker around, work with models. I remember working with battleship models and stuff like that. And then in senior year, it was 1983. As you can imagine, the PC industry started around that time. That IBM, obviously 1981 was when he started the PC. And we started getting some of the Commodore 64 computers in our classrooms. A very small computer lab in the high school that we have here, La Piedad. And I was one of the few that took that. It was a programming class, very basic, right? And do programming. I fell in love with computers and that Commodore 64. Then, as you can expect, we have, parents that can take you to different places to learn about careers and so forth. And there was one that worked in IBM office here in Puerto Rico in Atorrey, and he took a group of us to the IBM office and talked to us about IBM, which back then you can imagine they were the big technology, company, the company that you wanted to work. And as a high school student, I remember listening to it. They started talking a little bit about the IBM PC that they just created. And I said to myself, someday I want to work for that company. And that was it. I mean, I didn't know what was going to come after that. Then after I graduated, I went to University of Notre Dame, and I was in the electrical engineering department with a computer minor. Back then, there was no computer science or computer engineering, but they had a computer minor. And I started, obviously, that coursework. And I always were very focused on and good at the computer basic classes. When I was a sophomore, I was very fortunate that IBM, obviously, they needed a lot of young talent, and they were doing a lot of internships. So, I fill out a kind of a resume, not very big, and put it in one of those big binders that they have in the university that they send to all these companies. And somebody in Boca Raton picked up my name in there. And I was very fortunate that I was able to get an interview to go down to Boca Raton for an internship in the summer. And I was able to get an internship in a small group that was doing RISC processors design, chip design. Wow. So I started working with that group for the summer, and I did well. And then after I graduated, I had to different options because I was in ROTC and I had a scholarship. So usually when you have a ROTC program and a scholarship and engineering, you go in active duty. I mean, that's it. So, sometimes people think about how life, moments in life changes your career path or your position. And that's one that I could not control because I was in a contract with the military. And I tell my wife, if I would have to go active duty, most likely I would stay in a career in the military, most likely. But 1987, during that time, I think Reagan was trying to bring down the number of officers going active duty, and they allowed me to go reserve, which I did. And I actually didn't apply to any jobs. The only one that I was interested is going and working for IBM. Back then, there's no cell phones or anything, or really emails or anything. So you have to, depend on that phone. Right. And I remember them calling me right after I was graduating and say, hey, come down for interview because we're hiring people. Obviously, because the PC was growing, PS2 was growing at that time, and they were bringing a lot of people that have worked with them. I didn't have no jobs back then. My intent was to come back to Puerto Rico and did some programming because during the freshman summer, I was doing programming to in my mom's business that she was working, solving problems on what they were doing and using relational database in the PC to solve those problems. So, I got the interview and I was able to get a job with the IBM PC company in the group that was doing chip design development. Back then, IBM did development for everything, the motherboards, the chips, obviously, the manufacturing. In Boca Raton, we had all the manufacturing, assembly, development, and also OS there. And the motherboard was being built in Austin. So can you imagine being able to go there as a young engineer and then be able to understand, because that was the start of the PC architecture. I did a lot of PS2 microchannel, but also obviously the industry standard that had been created initially that eventually was the one that went through. So I was very fortunate that I as a chip designer, I was able to understand the PC really well. And I learned from a lot of great engineers from IBM and from the industry early on. So when IBM decided to close down the factory in Boca Raton and move to Raleigh, I moved with them and started doing system design, and then eventually the rest of my career. But those initial years were pivotal on my thinking, on the way I had to go and do things, and the base foundation of how I learned was critical, because that as I became a manager and a leader, then I was able to use that to really help me focus teams and so forth. But it was kind of interesting the way my career path went.
No, that's fantastic. Well done on you for getting involved early on and taking all of that information that you learned in that stage of your career and keeping it forward as you kind of went through things. It's always so powerful and empowering for someone that's in your position to know that the person above you, has an appreciation for all of the things that they're doing. As technology moves forward, there is that bit of distance that because you're not, in it freshly anymore, but you understand that, oh, these problems are, kind of fundamental and can transcend time. So when they're saying I'm having this issue, there's a bit of ability to empathize and even advocate for it. It's like, yeah, no, that is something, or maybe no, it's not.
Yeah, I tell you, I think that's learning that basic technology and architecture of the PC really helped me manage and lead teams in the future, because it put me in a very different position and appreciate the difficulties that a team has, which, as you know, technology gets more complicated. People want to do more things because, teams are more efficient, and then be able to focus the teams right and be able to focus the team on the big things, the things that really matter, are key to be able to launch products on time or with quality and so forth. So there's no doubt that learning that I did early on, and I did it for a good amount of time. I mean, I did chip design from 1980, 87. I went 1 year to the Army to do my training, came back, I did it all the way through 1992, 93, and then 95 moved to Raleigh. But then I learned system design before I went into management. So going through that whole process really gave me the foundation to be an effective leader, I think, in the future. And as you can see on today's world, technology is so important on every single facet. I don't care if you're a finance company, a bank in the banking industry, or whatever. Technology is so important that now senior executives need to be tech savvy to be able to navigate through all this and be able to take the advantage that technology can give you.
No, well said. Well said. All right. So you got yourself a, excellent foundational start in IBM. You're doing chip design. And then eventually, somewhere in your career, you end up with probably one of the most long-standing computer brands to date, ThinkPad. How did you get involved with ThinkPad?
Good. And it was when we moved to Raleigh, I was doing system design in the desktop team because desktop was the biggest thing, right? The
Hmm.
notebook started early on. I remember in 1991, when the first notebook that IBM ThinkPad wanted to do, they were looking at different chips, and actually they were looking at the chip that I was part of the designers that designed for the desktop, but it was very small and efficient, and they were thinking about using it in the notebook, but they didn't. But then a few years later, after working with Aptiva consumer team, one of my colleagues moved to the IBM division that does chip design and also different silicon, the Burlington group. And they were doing the DSPs. As you know, IBM did almost every technology out there. And, one of them was DSP. Well, that DSP was being used in ThinkPad for two purposes. Modem, remember, back
Hmm.
then, the only way you can communicate is through the network and also in the phone lines, which was very, very difficult. And also audio. So that DSP was doing two. Well, it was too difficult to do two things that were so demanding for processing. So we focused the DSP just to do the modem, the 56K modem. So this manager wanted to restructure and just focus the team because we were having a hard time doing both of those and say, okay, come and manage this group of DSP algorithm PhDs and engineers. And I remember I was a band back then and a brand new manager and said, we need to solve this for ThinkPad because that was the main DSP that we were using for the ThinkPad 600, which is one of the big
Yep.
volume products. So I did that for 2 years, and we were able to release it. And that's when I started working with customers really close, because as you can imagine, 56K modems are very dependent on the line, on the structure of the building, and so forth to solve. So you have to that algorithm needed to be fine-tuned all the time. So as a manager of that team, I had to go and, when customers were having problems, I had to go and see them in the different locations with some of our engineers and then figure out how we make it better. So that was my first real interaction with big customers constantly when they were having big problems and be able to make it good for them, right? So that's when I started working with ThinkPad back then. As soon as we shut down the DSP division, one of the managers of ThinkPad said, we need to transfer a team of that DSP algorithm to ThinkPad because obviously we need to maintain it, right?
Right.
We have a bunch of customers that bought the ThinkPad 600. I think hundreds of thousands, if not, I don't know the exact volume, but there was probably close to 1 million. And we need to maintain it. That's the value proposition that ThinkPad has always provided, is that we're going to sell something to you and we're going to back it off, right? We're going to back you with the support and the quality that I know that the customers deserve. So we form a group within ThinkPad with Tony Corkell, which is, he worked in that group for a long time, to do that, to manage the DSP algorithm transition, end of life until we put another DSP modem from a vendor, and to start working on how we develop some software to make preloads easier to develop. Also, the CD recovery, how we make the recoveries easier, and starting to do system updates, how you update the drivers automatically. So I started working with that group on those initial stages of creating those kind of solutions. So that gave me a lot of not just the hardware that I had before, but it gave me a lot of appreciation about how to develop software. And from there, I started working on the obviously new projects that ThinkPad had with the TX. We call it Extra R.
Yep.
And also the Transnode. I remember that Transnode that we work with research so much, and it was ahead of the time when you have the notebook and the notepad and you were writing and trying to recognize the writing of people. So that's when I started really, really more focused on ThinkPad. But it was around 1997 that I started working with ThinkPad directly, indirectly with the modem, and then directly around 1999.
Wow. It's funny you mentioned the Transnote. That is yeah, it was very much ahead of its time. I actually have one in the basement here. The only thing that sometimes doesn't work is the screen. I think it's a loose display cable, but everything else still
Yeah.
works. And yeah, that I could definitely see that machine was looking into the future.
Mhm.
The future might not have been ready at that time. You know,
But
but
but but that's the challenge of looking at problems that people have or companies have, and then the technology that we have, and how we use that technology to solve the problem. Back
Mhm.
then, we knew that tablets, writing, digital writing was critical, but the technology was not quite there. The user interface was not quite there. But that helped us learn. And that's
Mhm.
the key about what we do in this business, and why I think ThinkPad is being so successful is because we have an organization that continues to learn from the customer, listens to the customer, and then we implement that into the products. And then we figure out, the hard part is figuring out when is the technology ready to do that,
Mm.
and when not to be afraid to lead so you can learn quicker and be able to come up with a mass production product that allows
Mhm.
you to beat the competition in the market. That's the balance. And that's one that throughout the years, I've been very fortunate to be able to learn how to, master or drive and with colleagues, because obviously this is a collaboration effort. And then I think that's why ThinkPad continues to sell in the millions from when we started early on.
No. Well, that's a great point. Leads perfectly into the next question too, because ThinkPad has been around for over 30 years now, and you were working with them since 1997. So the majority of its lifespan thus far, and I think that's a rare thing in any industry where you get to work on a specific kind of product line uh, for so long, and that product line is still recognizable. It's
Mhm.
very popular to take a ThinkPad from the 90s and compare it to one that was just released, and they look different, but you can still tell that they are the same computer. And like from your perspective, what has that been like to work on something for that long that has that, I'll use the word continuity.
Yeah, and David Hill probably told you about this, is that it's an evolution.
Hmm.
And there's no question that we drive ThinkPad innovation, new technologies, year after year after year. But the way we do it is we evolve the design and the product, and we're very close on how we fit this together. And we understand what our core values are and make sure that we don't break those core values, that we make them better so the customer understands that we're going to be there for them. I think that's the key balance on it. I've been very lucky that even though sometimes in my career I did not work all the time with ThinkPad, but in a way related. Definitely when I was in my military tours, I was not working with ThinkPad, but at least I was using them and
Hmm.
providing feedback. And then when I was in procurement engineering, for example, with the global supply chain that I did 3.5 years, I really was not working with the ThinkPad design team, but I was working very closely with them because all the parts that go
Hmm.
into making a ThinkPad, my procurement engineering team was helping develop with the suppliers and those. So I always felt that ThinkPad was a brand that had a meeting because of that value proposition that we gave to our customers. And working and be associated with it was something that I wanted to do because I felt that being able to influence millions of people around the world in many areas, in finance, in education, in healthcare, you name it. I mean, because these products get used everywhere, right?
Mhm.
Being able to have that kind of influence, positive influence, is what really helped me keep motivated to continue to working in this brand, in this group. And that's why I never doubt, even though that I potentially could have opportunities somewhere else, I felt that, this is the place that I need to be and continue to work throughout the years. So yeah, it's an incredible brand, but it took time to build.
Mm-hmm.
And it took, detailed thought, like we call the core values: relentless innovation, thoughtful design, and quality, right? We look at those three focus areas, and then everything that we build is around that, and how we continue to make that a valuable proposition for our customers so they can continue to trust us and continue to buy us, because at the end of the day, that's the proof, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they don't buy you, then the brand goes away. But we've been very fortunate that we went through 100. I remember celebrating the 100 million ThinkPad around 2015.
Yeah.
And I was general manager, and we celebrated the 100 million. And now we just hit not too long ago 200 million when we did 30 years, and now we're past that. So especially when Lenovo took over and put focus, because they'll focus on PC, this brand has really been a much better vehicle to drive volume around the world. And we're all very proud of it. And that's why I think people that work in ThinkPad like to stay with it. Not even the employees in Lenovo and IBM back then, but even the suppliers and partners. They are proud working on the ThinkPad brand. And then our customers are critical. We listen to our customers, and the customers are part of that design process. Jerry Paradise, a colleague of mine that we've been working together for a long time. I'm sure you know him. He was just in CES. He drives the portfolio and been doing that for a long time for ThinkPad and many other products in commercial. But that relationship that we have with the customer is essential. And the way that we build our relationship and make the customer part of our design process, I think is one of the key value propositions for the entire brand.
I have to agree. Even from my own experience, back in December of last year, having the opportunity to test out pre-production versions of the X1 Fold 16. That was one of the highlights of my year, was being given that opportunity, and how it made me feel. Like, it was really cool to have, even just a tiny amount of input on such a cool and innovative device. And it's like, other people probably don't do that in the same way. So yeah, I can speak from experience and confirm what you're saying is absolutely true. Having those opportunities it's empowering, and it creates that connection.
Yeah, appreciate the input, because I'm telling you that X1 Fold 16 is a great product, but it was hard. It was hard to do. You can imagine foldables are very hard to do in the phone industry. You can imagine in PC, they're bigger screens, so it's even more challenges. But I love that product. I think that product is revolutionary, and eventually it will be a big part of the computer or the notebook segment in the future, as we figure out ways of making it obviously more bring the price downs, and as we drive more volume and so forth. But yeah, that product. I like it, and that product is awesome. That big screen. Once you get used to that big screen, it's very hard to go back to anything
Yes.
smaller than that.
Yeah. No, and it going back to what we were talking about earlier, it's like deciding when the technology is ready and yeah, just the form factor is so different that I can see if you don't ever have the opportunity to handle one and manipulate it, you might say, well, why would I need something like that? And it's like, for a lot of people, a laptop style is going to be perfectly okay. But if you're a
Right.
person that wants a tablet one day, an external monitor the next, a
Mhm.
laptop the following afternoon, but you need a journal, like that was the one thing that amazed me is that there was a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't have to carry anymore because I had that thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that to me is what's got me excited about that particular form factor is, it replaced a lot.
That's exactly what you're saying is the input that some of our customers are saying that why they like that foldable. And I agree with you. This is not for everybody.
Hmm.
That's why we have different products, right? In the X1 Fold 16, because of the screen size and the ability of going into different modes. And we design it to go into different modes, not just horizontal, but portrait mode. And
Hmm.
obviously you have the clamshell mode. Uh, all that flexibility allows a person that needs it, like you, to be more enjoys more doing the work because of the product that they have, right? And I'm the same way. I like that product because of the flexibility that allows me to go from a big screen to a smaller screen if I'm in the airplane, right?
Hmm.
Or if I want to watch a movie, I have a great OLED screen to watch a movie,
Yeah.
16-inch on a very reasonable weight and
Yes.
size when I have to
Yes.
carry it in my bag or in my hand. That's
Mhm.
why I really think that kind of product has a lot of opportunities for a lot of customers.
Yeah.
But it was hard to make, Thomas. It was hard to make. It was
I,
hard to make.
I can only imagine. I know that, yeah, they ran into a couple of things. I think it was after sometime around January or February. I think things were getting a little tricky, and but successfully, it did make its way out the door. And I'm looking forward to what Gen 2 and Gen 3 will look like because I think it is here to stay very much. Um, Earlier, you talked about the core values of ThinkPad, and you know, core values come from people, and
Mhm.
they come from different groups of people. And when you have a core value, it's because it's shared within those groups. So, how did the culture or the organizational structure of the teams that you worked with impact core values like the ones at ThinkPad or maybe other product lines that you've worked on?
Yeah, I think our organization is critical in the success of any product. I mean, at the end of the day, people is the most important asset that the company has. Lenovo has been wonderful of recognizing that talent is key. I'm sure other companies do it well too. But my experience on Lenovo and when I was in IBM is that talent was the key of making sure the products will be successful. And how you build that talent, uh, it's very important. I think Lenovo has a great advantage because the talent that is spread out around the world when we started, and it was kept that way. I mean, think
Mm,
about that, right? When you make a new organization, a new company, many people might think, oh, we're going to do this, transfer that. But we kept 4 teams intact. If we did transition, of course, we did transition where it makes sense.
mhm,
But we left core teams that were there from the beginning in the US, in Japan, in China, that we continue to feed and we continue to nurture to be able to continue to grow the organization with the ability of keeping those core values intact. And the interaction that we had with those teams, I think was critical. For example, a big part of the portfolio teams is in the US. I mean, the US has the big knowledge of commercial enterprise, right, with the big companies and throughout the years. So understanding the customer, meeting with the customer constantly, and how we solve those problems, and how you take those problems and define a product with it, together with development, because that's the importance, right? How you match those two to make sure that you can drive a successful product launch that is possible, right? With the right technology to solve that customer problem and the right quality. So, that interaction between development and product management, marketing, and the supply chain all together throughout the years continues to be, I think, an important factor of why this brand is so successful. Understanding the customer, understanding the technology, driving innovation that matters to the customer, and knowing that the technology is ready for it, and then driving flawless execution as we produce millions of these units, and making sure that we do it with quality. All that was wrapped up in a very nice way by Lenovo, and every team member was very important into that equation. And I think that culture allows us to continue to build ThinkPad with high quality. People recognize that, and the industry and the customer recognize that, and people obviously felt pride, and they were proud of the products that they do. So that builds a loyalty in the team. And throughout the years, the second thing that we make sure we do is how we build young talent to continue to grow in that organization, so eventually they can become the leaders in the future and understand the value proposition of ThinkPad and the core values, so we can continue to evolve it. Many people, throughout their careers, is ThinkPad continue to be relevant? Back in 2000, is ThinkPad going to be relevant in 2005, in 2010, 15? Are we modern enough? Throughout the years, I hear the same thing from a lot of people when they come in. And yes, we need to continue to evolve and be relevant, but understanding that the value proposition, those core values, are important to the customer, and we need to make sure that we continue to service them. And to do that, you have to have people in the organization to be able to understand that and continue to build it. So succession plans have been a critical part of the organization throughout the years in all the teams. And that's something that Lenovo has done, extremely well. I really appreciate YY's leadership on understanding the talent, on understanding what each group has to provide, and supporting it and nurturing it. And then how we build those leaders throughout the organization, so we can continue it. And then we bring professionals and young, from the industry all the time, but in a way that is well balanced, that allows to keep that core value and culture growing. And if we see something that doesn't work, we change it. But I think that ability of keeping that culture and continue to feed it, is why I think we've been able to last, for over 31 years. And, I just left after 36 and a half years, and my successor, Tsumoto-san, which is an excellent, engineer, great technical mind, he took over the organization, commercial organization, which part of it is ThinkPad. He was a ThinkPad leader for a few years already, development-wise. So, I remember him working early on in 2000 in the first X1, later on the first X1 Carbons and the X1 line, and how he continued to grow. And he delivered, and he continued to grow. And that's what you want in an organization. You give opportunity to people, they deliver, and then you make sure that they grow through it. So I can tell you, organization is is part of the critical formula for ThinkPad to be able to last this many years.
Yeah, no, that makes phenomenal sense to me, because as you say, people are going to grow and change and rise up, but you want to make sure that the ideas that worked are the things that's the baton that's passed on, because if that wasn't successful, then you would probably see some pretty dramatic changes that would not be in line with those core values. And if you have a situation where you have enough dramatic change that deviates from the core values that made you successful, that's what can cause a product or an organization to fail. So if you've been doing it correctly for over 31 years, then you've probably been successful.
Yeah, and obviously, I've been very fortunate that previous leaders of the organization that I worked for started this. Naito-san, Naito-san, he's the father of ThinkPad. He was a key mentor of mine and influencer on how development, should be organized, and how he drove the organizations for the mindset of listening to the customer, making sure that we do quality products. And to me, he was a key leader. So there's Peter Hortensius, Fran O'Sullivan, Johnson Jai from our team in Lenovo. There's a lot of leaders that we had that continue that legacy of ThinkPad, and the new leaders that we have in place right now. I'm confident they will continue to do that in the way that we do the succession plans is a critical tool to help us do it.
Mm-hmm. No, fantastic. So switching gears a little bit, back to your personal experiences. I understand that you did serve in the forces in the United States there. You did a couple of tours, one in Iraq, one in Afghanistan, ROTC, as you've shared earlier, and then career in reserves, but also those 2 deployments. So obviously a lot of life experience. How did you feel that those experiences transferred to your civilian life? Even specifically with regards to maybe your expectations on how you approached technology, or problem solving or product creation, any of those things, really.
Well, the military has been part of my life for 23 years. I retired after 23 years. After the deployment that I did in Afghanistan, I think I waited 2 more and retired. And it was a big part of who I am. I admire the military tremendously. The organization that we have, the U.S. military, is, in my mind, the best organization in the world. The way that they do things on, focus, discipline, training, the way they train their soldiers from E1 all the way to officers, all the way to generals, is a continuous learning process. It never ends. And I think that's one of the key things that I learned from the military, is the ability to recognize that you always have something new to learn, and you always have something to make better. And if something goes wrong, which, in military, a lot of things can go wrong, especially in the battlefield, how you gather that information, focus it, and be able to make decisions quicker with the information that you have available to you. To me, that's one of the key things that I got from the military is, how do I focus based on the information that I have? And because I have all this training, all this knowledge, their leadership in there trusts me that with the information I'll get, I'll make the best decision available at that time for that task. So decision-making process is one of the things that I learned in the military, through all the leadership, obviously the skills that I learned from there. The other thing that I learned is collaboration, teamwork. As you can imagine, that's one of the key things about the military. You depend on the soldier next to you, especially when I went on deployment. That's when you really experience it. That collaboration, that teamwork, that pride on that group of people you're working with, really translate to what I wanted to do in my civilian job, right? And to me, that was also very powerful. Collaboration, teamwork, and how to build that culture that that allows the individuals in that team understand that each one of them are important to the mission, and then be able to be clear with the communication of that intent and mission, so then people can follow you. That helped me also tremendously on the civilian side. And there's no question that technology is critical in the battlefield. I remember in my first deployment to Iraq, I was still in IBM. It was before the merger. I went in 2003 and 2004, and that was right after 9/11. It was basically after that. And I remember the technology there was good. We had the PC, but it's still, communication was still difficult. Internet was starting, and when we got there, communication was not readily available because, as you can imagine, it's not easy. But people were used to it. People were used to the internet now, and people, especially, professionals. So when I was a part of the logistical team that took care of a whole base, and I was a communication officer, very important for technology. I remember, we had a base where we have hospitals, we have units from other parts of the world, because we were all down in Anasaria area, where in the southern base that we have down there. And I went in April 7, I remember, crossover. And the only communication that we had was 1 megabits per second on a satellite that the communication unit established. 1 megabit per second, which is not very much, and we had maybe thousands of soldiers to a hospital with doctors that are used to. So you can imagine when people are trying to access internet or email and so forth, we had to quickly react and figure out how to solve these problems quickly, right? So we can satisfy our customers. And one of the solutions is, let's set up a Microsoft Exchange server so we can control the network inside the base. We don't have to go out, because back then people were going out to the internet to do email, which was using the Army website in the cloud instead of doing it internally. So we can limit how much bandwidth was going in and out. So problem solving was a key thing that I also learned from the military. And obviously technology back then was critical for that. The other thing is the communication was limited. I remember doing, my letters at the beginning with MRE. We ate MRE for quite a few months, and the cardboards, that's what we used to send letters back home before all the email was available. So video conferencing was not available back then.
Right.
So the email was, and heavily, and people were able to communicate through email once we established good bandwidth. Once you go in, a few months pass, then we have good food, good places to sleep, and then eventually we'll get good internet. And we did. So I was at the beginning of the phase, so I saw the transformation. So when the second team came in, they already had internet, they already had the PX established, we already had the communication and putting enough bandwidth. So I understood back then how technology was so important in the military, but obviously how we can translate that on problem solving, and how quick you need to make decisions to be able to solve these problems. So my second deployment was 5 years later. And that was in Afghanistan. In my first deployment, I went through a lot of places in Iraq, but I was most of the time in the base. In Afghanistan, I was in a small 12-man team that was advising the division of the army in Afghanistan, in Kabul area. So, they will secure the area and do obviously we did training within combat operations and so forth, security operations. Back when I returned 5 years into that deployment, we had good internet, we had good rooms to stay in. I remember that now Skype was working, right?
Right,
Much
right.
better because we have good bandwidth. That was when I started realizing, man, camera and audio is going to be essential,
Hmm.
because I used it. I was able to communicate back home and be able to be part of at least the life at home, because we had video conferencing like we have right now. We take it for granted now.
Hmm.
And so I remember, it was Christmas Day, and me being able to be part of that Christmas Day morning. My kids, I have three girls, and my kids were opening, their gifts. We were able to use Skype for me to be able to connect with them. And then I'd say, how important is communication is, and how important is this PC allowing that connection from around the world? That's when it really hit me. And video conferencing, as you know, it's essential right now. So when I got that, understanding that, it helped me working with the teams on, do we need to improve cameras, or we need to improve audios and microphones and so forth, to make the video conferencing much better. And before the pandemic hit, we in ThinkPad, we started improving camera quality, audio quality for many reasons,
Hmm.
But the industry was ready, even though that we didn't know the pandemic was coming. The
Hmm.
industry was ready because we had the cameras, we had the microphone, we had the Zoom, we had the Teams. And when the pandemic hit, the technology was able to deliver and help the situation much better. People were able to work remote. Not everybody, but quite a few people were able to work remote. So, all these problems out there, are out there, and the key is, can you see them? Can you see the opportunity, and how you solve them using the technologies is the fun part. But military to me it was tough, obviously, but it was very
Hmm.
good. And it definitely was a key moment in my life, and a big part of who I am today is because of what I learned from my colleagues and the experiences that I had there.
You've obviously, over your career, with both IBM and Lenovo, you've had the opportunity to work on a variety of different products, product lines, devices. What I'm curious is, are there a handful of devices that you look back and say, I'm pretty proud that I worked on that product, or that product line. And I'm just wondering what those might be, and why.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, every product that I worked on, I'm very proud of. But I'll give you a couple of examples. I was very I was leading the product development team for Lenovo for 3.5 years. So I had all the product lines: consumer, SMB, and commercial. And so I was fortunate to work on the yoga design. As you know, Lenovo invented the yoga, the 360 hinge, the
Mhm.
2-in-1, if you want to call it. And I remember we had a really nice hinge, and we were deciding to move to the next hinge, which we wanted to give it purpose.
Mhm.
And it was not an easy decision, convincing product marketing and a few others, right? And also the engineering challenges that came with it. So we said, okay, if we're going to do another hinge, it needs to be uh, meaningful, something that the customer not only look at appearance, but can we do something that people can feel why that hinge changed? And that's when
Mhm.
we decided to put speakers on it. And there was a
Okay.
purpose. It's not just antennas, but because a lot of people put antennas in the hinges, obviously.
Mhm.
But we decided, okay, let's put speakers on it so we can enhance the audio experience of the consumer, because we knew that audio was becoming more relevant, more important for users in the PC, in the notebook. It didn't used to be before, but as the notebook evolved, it was very important. So that was a challenge of making sure we convince, obviously, the people that uh, in product marketing that felt comfortable with the original hinge design, and also the challenges that come with having the right technologies to implement speakers inside a very small space.
Mhm.
So we were able to do it, and it came out and very well recognized by the industry, and that became a new yoga kind of premium device, and a new way of enhancing audio in all the modes of yoga. So I was very proud of how the team executed, collaborated with all the teams to be able to make that difficult change and enhance the overall experience to the user. On the other devices, I had also all the commercial products. For example, ThinkStation, the workstations that we do. We just did a complete redesign of the products that are just fantastic. And I know the team did a great job of not just, as you know, performance is king in the workstation. That's what product management team, always keeps saying. So being able to drive, incredible performance and a mechanical that looks good for a workstation and also has the flexibility of changing things, because as you know, users in the workstation segment wants to be able to change memory, change cards, and be able to have that flexibility so we built a whole new set of desktop products that have all that, and I believe our leadership in the industry. So that, to me, that's another set of products that I think at the end of the day continues to drive that mentality of listening to the customer and how we make those problems into a product. So the other one is smart collaboration, which we got into a few years back, where we had to design one of our first smart collaboration devices. As soon as we saw Teams continue to grow, and early on, and it was Skype at the beginning, we knew that digital collaboration was going to be essential. So we created a small group to develop obviously a smart device, an appliance that will run Teams and Zoom, and that's another set of products that again, very difficult to do because conferences rooms are different sizes, there are different structures on the walls, glass, all that affects the audio, and more importantly the voice, the mics, and how you deal with those algorithms. So, that set of products also, I think, was very important because it's revolutionary, and it's making the conference room digital, smarter in that sense, right? And I think that's going to continue to explode. And so the ThinkSmart Hub Generation 1 was one of the other products that I was very proud of.
I just want to write down that product name, because that's something that it is absolutely important, and it's gotten more important. And obviously the pandemic happened, which raised everything temporarily, but then people were like, wait a minute, if we can do this now, why don't we just keep doing it? And I think for a lot of people, they see the value in those solutions. It's fascinating sometimes when we're forced to do things that we have no choice in, and it's like, huh, this isn't actually too bad.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
no, that's great. So three really distinct and excellent products or product lines that you're particularly proud of. The next question is, what are some things that were like, real challenges maybe? And they could just be straight up challenges that, you were like, we tried this and, it didn't work, but there was a lot of growth, a lot of learning. Or maybe it was challenging in the rewarding sense where, you were working on something for quite a while and you're like, we are going to get to the other side of this and it's going to be great. But yeah, I just wanted to give you the opportunity if there was anything that kind of fell into that category that you've worked on over your career that you wanted to share.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you the X1 family is being one of those products that it's been wonderful to work with because it's challenging but very rewarding because you can see people accepting that line because of the sales that we're making in the premium. When we started the X1 Carbon, and previous to that was the X1, previous to that. The idea was we're doing great with TX, R, E, but we needed to create a more premium ThinkPad that will go after new technologies, make it the thinnest, the lightest, but great performance, and be able to also drive a more modern design at the same time, and be able to say, okay, will people go and buy that kind of product in the commercial segment? And lo and behold, the first product line, came out, and it was modest, but then we learned from it, and then we built the second generation, and now we start seeing the traction that people like the combination of having a good-looking design, great quality, thin and light, 14-inch screen, which the first one was a 13.3, but the second one we did a 14-inch screen, and the new technologies that allow people to be more efficient. For example, when we started doing the first OLED panel was done on an X1, that we collaborated with Samsung, and so that product really hit with everyone, and we saw it. Not everyone, the premium segment, right? But everyone agreed that was a great product. So then we started figuring out how can we continue to make it better and steer again how we can continue to maintain the core and value proposition of it. Because if you make it thinner and lighter, it becomes harder to make sure that can I sustain the durability that ThinkPad is well known of. That's why the carbon, right? We use the X1, we use the carbon in the A cover because it's lighter, it's strong, and allows to be able to drive durability, the durability message. So as we started having success, then one of the things that we discussed was, should we expand it? What do we do next to beat the previous one? That's when we started thinking about, okay, and the convertibles was becoming a very important form factor for a segment of the market. And Jerry Paradise and I were talking back and forth, working with the teams and the customers. Okay, what do we do next? And then we decided to do the X1 Carbon clamshell to become the thinnest and lightest 14-inch, but then do a convertible, which was the X1 Yoga. So we expanded the line, which then we did the X1 tablet. And we found that was very successful. Now, was it challenging? Of course. I mean, I remember the X1 Yoga. One of the things that we wanted to do is make sure that we drive a great experience as you convert it to tablet. And that's when we did the lift and lock keyboard.
Yes. Yeah.
And initially, and that was done in another product, by the way. That was done in a ThinkPad Yoga 260. But the X1 Carbon really took it to that next level. And the X1 Yoga, and we did it for a few generations to make people comfortable when they put it in tablet mode. But it has a lot of challenges on how you drive that keyboard down and keep the quality. So the X1 line drives the new technology, but we need to make sure that we do it with great quality and reliability because the customers are expecting that. And doing that on brand new technology is not an easy task. So you can imagine that we put a lot of effort, we put a lot of good talent to make those choices. So the X1 Carbon, X1 Yoga, which is X1 2-in-1 now, continue to evolve throughout the years. And now one is at the 12th generation, right? X1 Carbon. And then the X1 2-in-1, I think it's the 9th. And then we continue to expand that line carefully, right? And X1 Fold became the next big one when we did it in 2020 on the 13, and now we expanded to the 16. Those require engineering challenges on how you control the thermals, how you drive the performance, but maintain it cool and quiet most of the time so people can have a great experience. Those challenges were always very difficult to balance between all those combinations.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, these are general purpose machines that you run a lot of software on it, and be able to maintain that kind of balance is not an easy. But you saw the new X1 Carbon Generation 12, where we had a new fan design, dual design with a new way of driving the cooling in the bag that allow us to keep really, really cool most of the time, pretty much all uh, in all applications, and allow us to increase the performance to 25 watts instead of 21 watts that we did last year. A lot of effort was focused on that fan design and how we make sure that we drive the air, around the different components inside, to keep the machine. And I'm using it right now talking to you. So again, that's why this line is so challenging but rewarding, because as you see those new implementations, you see people accepting them
Hmm.
and people being able to say, yes, I like the product. But once in a while you make some misfires and you have to correct them. So I don't know if you remember when we did the 5-button click pad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
A few years back. It was a good intention, but because we wanted to give more space to people, but we know we didn't implement it right.
Hmm.
When it came out, people didn't like it. So we quickly, in a year, went back to the track point, and we didn't find the right technology to give that option back until now. And as you know, the X1 Carbon Generation 12 has an option for
Hmm.
those people that want to have a bigger pad size, to have the force pad, which I'm using right now. And I'm a track point user. Now we're able to very closely replicate the force of a force pad with a regular mechanical button, and the accuracy of being
Hmm.
able to do that properly. So the experience for those people that use track point and a button becomes almost the same. Is it exact? No, but it's almost the same. And I'm using it, and I feel
Hmm.
very happy with it. So again, those are technologies that we have now and we didn't have before, and when to introduce it so you don't disappoint users is key. And so we felt very comfortable, and now we're providing options, and now we have a much bigger pad in the X1 Carbon that we have with the regular buttons. And the people that want buttons, mechanical buttons, still have the option to do that. So I think the X1 line is a perfect example of how you can continue to push technology, but
Hmm.
making sure that you provide and continue to provide the best experience, so you don't disappoint people with the core values that you provide.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like the X1 Carbon Gen 12 is definitely piqued my interest for a lot of the reasons that you've already brought up. I've been daily driving the X1 Nano Gen 1 since
Mm,
that came out, and that that was an interesting product as well, because it was one of the thinnest and lightest laptops that you could get at the time, let alone ThinkPad.
mhm,
And a lot of, and it also had a beautiful screen in it as
mhm,
standard. And that was
mhm,
actually what made the decision for me, because I was thinking, oh, do I go a T series? Do I do an X1 Carbon? And then I saw this, beautiful meet in the middle, 2.8K, 100%
mhm,
color accurate panel, thin and light laptop. And I was like, ooh, that looks really good. And then there was a lot of discussion, with people that I know and also online. And it's like, but it's only got two USB Type C ports. You'll be living, out of your bag with dongles your entire time using the laptop. And it's like, well, maybe, but let's give it a try.
mhm,
And, do I have a dongle in my travel kit? Yeah. Does it get used every day? Does it get used every week? The answer is no. So, like, if like that, I think that was like one of those perfect timing things that you were talking about earlier. It's like, well, when are we ready to roll out something that's so thin that only has ports that are this tall and have it be successful for the consumer? And that was one of those eye-opening moments. And yeah, your discussion of the force pad too, having the opportunity to try that out on the X1 Fold production sample that I had, and
First.
being a track point user myself, um, that was really, really cool. But I also understand that unless you've used that physical pad, you may not necessarily have the confidence that some of the what I'll refer to as the old guard will, that want those physical buttons. So having both as an option, I think, is a brilliant, brilliant move, because you'll have people that are like, willing to try the force pad, or, don't consider the need for the buttons at the top when they're doing their purchasing. And I think getting that tech out there is going to give customers, as we've talked about, an opportunity to provide a lot of feedback on how to make that experience better.
Yeah, my wife uses an X1 Nano. She loves it. She loves the size, the light, and she doesn't mind about the ports because she doesn't use the ports that much.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't need to present in conference rooms that much or anything like that. So to her, that's not a key requirement. And so, I think that product sits well for people that want to, like you said, light, don't need that many ports, but it's a beautiful design and it's a beautiful screen. So for my wife, it's perfect. For somebody like me that had conference, presentations and so forth, perhaps the 14-inch X1 Yoga, which is one of my favorite devices, or X1 Carbon, makes more sense because we are able to keep the ports, but make it, in a nice way. And as like we shown in the X1 Carbon, we were able to improve the ratio of the panel to body to be really narrow, but still maintain all the key ports of HDMI, USB-A, and USB-C. So it's all a challenge on how you do trade-offs around the different requirements. But again, making sure that we satisfy that customer, which they're very different. And we're happy to try to meet there so we can get more people, into the ThinkPad, bandwagon. I wish more people use the track point. I think the track point is a great pointer. And I think if you use it for a couple of weeks, you realize how useful it can be. And that's why you still have quite a few people using it. But there's no question that the pad is very important. And that's why we want to provide a better experience, and having a bigger pad for a lot of the people that buy our products is very important. So we want to provide that option to them so they can have a great experience also.
Absolutely. So, if you had an opportunity to stare into your crystal ball and look into the future, what do you think might be some of the next big steps forward when it comes to how we interact with technology?
Good question. There's no question AI, it's going to be, it is a big inflection point right now in technology. As you go through the different history, there's certain technologies that make major changes to a product that makes it more relevant and allows it to be more volume. I remember initially when we had the ThinkPad, when we were able to do wireless communication, that changed what mobility was all about. Now people that maybe were questioning to getting a notebook, they say, okay, yes, I can use a notebook because I have it in the desktop, I can move it around. So wireless communication, as simple as that one technology was, not simple, because it's not simple, but one feature in the product, working very close to our partner with Intel and others, making that wireless feature integrated into our notebooks was a big inflection point. AI, I think, is a big inflection point. Even though that we've been doing AI in many of our products, like the computer vision that we put in X1 Cardinal a couple of years ago, is using AI to be able to detect it. I'm looking this way, I'm looking that way. Can I dim the screen so I can save power, right? When I leave, dim the screen so people cannot just look at my notebook. I mean, those things are using some AI and training to be able to make it, viable. But now the AI that is happening with obviously Microsoft generative AI, it's a huge opportunity for the PC. Now the PC is becoming even more personal for different experiences. Not only the experiences of Photoshop that might use an AI to change a picture, or you draw something and you're able to create, a picture out of that drawing, but more importantly, how it can assist me be more efficient. So that whole generative AI on how can I be more efficient with my documents, with the way I write things, I think it's going to be a game changer. And our PC is at the center of it. I'm talking about for the industry. The PC is at the center of it. Throughout the years, I remember many times when the phone came out, digital phone, right, iPhone, and then the tablet. Many people say the death of the PC is coming. I understood why people would say that, but I said there's no way. We're going to continue to evolve, and the flexibility of what the PC can do is something that people are going to need. And clearly, after the pandemic, that was shown, right? Now that everybody needs to have a PC, not just one for the family. So I think generative AI is going to make it even more relevant that the PC is needed to be able to use this new technology. Now, how we use it is going to be key. How to make sure that we have privacy, that we don't have, AI that doesn't provide the right data, because there's a lot of data out there, and AI can make it look like it's real fact, but as we know, it is not. So I think the data analytics and identifying how you take that data and making sure that it's not deceptive, making sure that it's not incorrect, so then people are making decisions, wrong decisions because of the data that is not correct, it's going to be a big challenge for AI. So the training is going to be critical. The privacy is going to be critical, right? To make sure that it doesn't steal IP from other people. All those things are not solved yet, and they need to be solved before it really becomes big. But some of the AI, that technology that is happening right now, that the PC can use, it's going to be something that's going to excite people and say people, okay, I need to have a new PC because of it. So the hardware that we're putting now together with our partners, having NPU engines to be able to do inference of AI, it's critical. So you're going to see a lot more of that. I think training models are going to be critical, and the question how you train the models, the workstations that I was talking about, I was very proud of that, because those workstations will have the capability of being great for engineers and trainers to train models in a small way before it goes out to the cloud and being trained in a big way, right? So that kind of usage is going to also be critical. So Lenovo is in great shape to be able to provide end-to-end solutions on all those phases of AI, inferencing, training, models in the cloud. And that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to see how Lenovo continues to win in the market with that. But AI clearly is an inflection point in technology today that is going to affect software, obviously, hardware, and then experiences that people are going to use. I mean, when is the last time you see a technology like that changing major corporations developing OS
Yeah.
and what you put in the CPU and in the systems. When is the last time that something like that happened? It's
Yeah.
been a while. It's been a while. So AI is clearly, especially generative AI, is clearly, an inflection point in our industry, and it's very exciting, and I can't wait to see what comes out of it.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. That got the opportunity to go to Tech World in October in Austin and see what Lenovo was working on even at that point, and seeing the press releases that they've been doing in January for CES, like even just those few months, seeing a vision go to reality in such a short amount of time it's impressive and it's exciting for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think the whole industry, not just technology industry, but healthcare, everybody in different industries are going to be able to use AI in a big way.
Hmm.
So I'm also interested to see how the governments and the businesses are going to be responsible of using that information, uh, and what kind of regulations they might put in place, to prevent bad actors, right?
Hmm.
To take advantage of that. So it's yeah, it's going to be an interesting ride, that's for sure, and I think an opportunity. I think clearly a lot of people are concerned about jobs and stuff like that, but I think there's a lot of opportunity of new jobs being created that people are going to be able to use, and then be able to make a good living because of those jobs. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and great point on like jobs and opportunities. I remember it was about a year ago reading a statistic that in about 1899, 83% of people that were employed in the United States were employed in the agriculture industry.
Hmm.
And it's like, is that the life that 83% of people wanted back then? I'm gonna guess probably not. Like there's probably
Hmm.
more desires and goals and dreams than, working in agriculture. And now that number is about 2 or 3% through technology efficiencies and just, the roll of time. And I can definitely understand and empathize with people having that reaction, but it's like, these things don't stay stagnant anywhere for anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a perfect example. People saw other opportunities because of advancements of the industrial revolution and so forth, and then people adapted to it. And I think something like that will happen with AI. But I think responsibility, the impact of digital, how fast and how broad quickly it can go because of
Hmm.
the connections that we have made in the internet and the networks. Any minor change can impact so many people. That's why I think figuring out how you're going to regulate this, I hate to say the word regulation,
Hmm.
because you don't want, you want to be free, but there's no question that there's bad actors out there, and how you minimize that is going to be important. And to me, the data, how you feed that model and how you train it with the right data, it's going to be key. And to me, that's the biggest challenge I see in the industry: how you feed the right data so you don't have responses that are going to be making bad decisions for corporations, governments, or people.
Hmm. Oh, well said. There is one last thing that I want to ask you, not a question we have written down, but I want to know more about that giant track point. Because was that a cake?
Yes, yes,
Like
yes, yeah,
what?
yeah.
So tell me just quickly about that. Like, was that your retirement cake, this giant track point?
Yeah, I was very fortunate that when I announced my retirement, I worked with so many teams that I actually had a trip in December where I went, I was here in the US, and then I went to Taipei, I went to Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Hefei, and then I went to Japan in Tokyo, in the Yokohama area, and then Yonezawa, because I had 900, 1,000 engineers that I've been working with for so many years. And a good way of transitioning, having a good transition as we talk about. So the next leader was with me in all those places. So people wanted to, celebrate their retirement. And so, as you can imagine, that's how you see the effect that ThinkPad has on people. They created cakes related to ThinkPad, obviously. And one of them was this big track point that they did perfectly. I mean, that was awesome. And it was special. I mean, that's being obviously an important part of my life, and they know that. I actually love the track point because I use it every day. But I think people wanted they appreciate, the many years that I had, and I'm very humble and honored being able to work with them. I mean, that's the part that I told them. I'm a better man because of the people that work around me, and I got the better part of it. And I'm very happy that I was able to see those celebrations and those beautiful cakes that they made. Some of them were computers,
Very
so
cool.
some of them were X1 Carbon was one of them. That one that you saw was a track point. So it was great. It was great.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Louis, for sharing all of these stories and your time and your expertise. And yeah, I can't wait to hear about what you might be doing next for the next couple of years of your second career. But
Yeah, that's gonna be, right now I'm just taking it easy. Yeah, traveling with my wife, and my youngest daughter is getting married in June, so we're obviously planning for a wedding. But yeah, and I work with a lot of charities in Raleigh and in the Durham area. So I'll be, hopefully I can get more involved now that I have time. We believe in education, so that's one of the areas that my wife and I want to continue to increase our time and talent. So you'll see me, in technology, but not in a big way like I did with Lenovo. That was an incredible opportunity for me, and I'm very thankful and grateful that I was able to do that. Not too many people have that opportunity, and I'm very grateful that I did.